Actually, just before I went on vacation, Phoenix decided to host an event before a new game that had just come out. And so, did you want to tell people what we got to play, Phoenix?
Sure. So we hopped into TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which was a good time, I think. What do you think of it?
I'll use one of my patented words recently that everyone who watches the channel, I'm sure, knows. Uh, it was very homagey.
Homage.
Uh, Although I guess you can call it a homage, seeing as how it was homaging it's a game previously from the IP or games. But yeah, it felt fun, but it felt also very basic in a way. Like one of Phoenix's, I don't know if you guys know, but one of Phoenix's favorite games ever is what was it, Turtles in Time,
Yeah,
which
yeah, Turtles
for
in Time.
multiple systems in the 90s. And it felt like a better looking, more modern take on that, but it also, in my opinion, felt a little stripped away, if that makes any sense. Like, I actually, from what I remember playing, I think I enjoyed playing Turtles in Time a bit more than this one.
That's what I was going to
But
ask. Like, how much of those older Turtles arcade games did you play?
there's
Like,
not many. I remember playing Turtles in Time, and there might have been there was another one on the, I think the Genesis that I played.
yeah,
It's in that
You had Hyperstone Heist, which is the one of the
that's probably the one
Genesis.
I played.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then there was like Turtles the arcade game. And those are probably like the big three that people kind of like to call back to. So what do you feel like was stripped down from the older versions?
Um. Oh shit! You put me on the spot. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta back up
Hey, you
my
have an
opinion.
opinion. You have to have to reinforce it.
It could very well just be that I was very young playing some of those games, and maybe they felt more grand. I mean, this, in my opinion, felt a bit basic. I mean, I felt like you couldn't. There was no like interacting with other objects. That opinion also could be affected by having played something like Scott Pilgrim, where I feel like that's a very similar game type and delivered some very similar experiences. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm having a hard time now, kind of backing up what I said.
I feel like, at least from a gameplay perspective, it's probably as good, probably better, at least from a mechanical standpoint. Like, as far as like interactivity, those old games were never known for you being able to do too much with the environments. Like, you could kick a pylon, you could fall in
Mm.
manholes, and you could still do that in this game. So, I mean, that held up for the most part as far as that level of interactivity.
I don't remember. Was there more than just a quick attack and then a special? Because I feel like
Mm-mm.
that's all we had in this game, right? There was like
You had
one attack.
you had far more combat options in this new game than you did in the old one. Like,
I was
last
drinking when I played this. I don't
That's
know.
not an excuse. Now you could do more combat in this one. Like, you had like your special moves. You had more kind of throws you could do. Like, the combat was definitely expanded. I'm not gonna say it was like super evolved or anything, but you could definitely do more in this newer game than you could in the old one. I'm not saying that makes the game better, but from a combat standpoint, you could do just as much as you could before and then some. So I feel like
Mhm.
from at least a technical standpoint, this game is probably as good as the older games. I think where it lost me was, at least in the first half of the game, I don't know if it's just the theming, or I felt like it was kind of dragging its wheels for a while. Especially if I compare it to Turtles in Time. I felt like Turtles in Time, for those who have played that a lot, it moved pretty quickly through different environments. Like, you had the skyscraper level at the beginning, for those who recall that. Then you had a city kind of street level. Then you were in the sewer, and then almost just after that, you were already like in the Technodrome. Then they're sending you back in time, and I feel like the theming
Mhm.
changed a lot. This game, like, it felt almost padded, like the first half of it. You had a lot of just kind of standard city building
Which
levels before we got to
which
think
is
anything overly interesting.
which is kind of an odd critique considering. I mean, we beat the game in what, 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Saying
It was
something
never a
felt
long
padded.
game, but Turtles in
Yeah.
Time was never a long game either. Remember, it was an arcade game, so I mean, it had to be something that
Hmm.
was reasonable to beat in a somewhat sit down setting. Um,
No.
I think what I didn't like, though, is beyond just the environment is not changing very often. I feel like we didn't get a whole lot of enemy variety for a long time in that game. I mean, it was all just standard foot soldier fare for a while, and then eventually, as you start getting to a few of the, I'm trying to remember some of the unique or more unique levels in this game. But I feel like even those enemies were all throwbacks to
I
the
felt
old
like
enemies.
when you got to the lair or the what was it? When you get to like Krang's like future, when you get to the futuristic areas, I feel like there were some. Although it was some of the same enemies from like the TV show, like wasn't it like the little pincher
Yeah, and that was in Turtles in
bots?
Time and those older games. I mean, that was all about the same. They had, I think, I'm looking at your B-roll now, so they had like a larger pincer robot, but I don't know. I felt the enemy variety lacked a little bit. Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. I enjoyed playing through it. This by no means dethrones Turtles in Time to me. It was a nice kind of throwback for nostalgia, but I
Hmm.
don't feel like it was as memorable or necessarily a better game. The music too didn't hit for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, I remember when we were all playing together, that was one of our biggest like critiques is that the music just wasn't slapping. There was no bangers. It was just like,
It's not that it was
I,
terrible. I think it was a fact they kind of mixed the chip tune with like standard kind of like rock vibes, but something about it didn't quite hit right. Like I missed just the pure like chip tunes from the older
well, I
ones.
feel like if they would have found a way to throw some sort of like bit filter onto it, maybe it would have sounded better. But it all felt too clean.
Well, they
If
had
that
chip
sounds.
tunes in it. I mean, when I say chip tune, I do mean 8-bit music. And like they had that mixed into some of the tracks. It just, I don't know. It didn't. I don't know. I don't want to say it sounded too clean. That might be the wrong word, at least in my
That's
opinion.
what I just said. Yeah, I thought it sounded too
Well, I'm
clean.
not sure if it does sound too clean. I don't know if I
Oh,
describe
you're
it
not.
that way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound like the thing about chiptunes is they were usually really simplistic melodies that were catchy, and they were simplified because the technology was simpler at that time. Not that
Hmm.
you couldn't do more orchestrated pieces, but they were made to be kind of simplistic, catchy tunes that they could repeat over and over and over again. I think the fact that they use these as like track-like structures and there's just more instrumentation to me kind of lost some of the character to it. So the music didn't quite hit as hard to me. The gameplay I thought was fine. I did like that you could have what was it, 6 players instead of just I think I'm trying to recall. I think on the SNES you could only have two because Super Nintendo only had two. So unless you're doing like the actual arcade machine or something, you were limited on controllers. So I definitely think from that standpoint of having more people play, that was great. But I don't know. It was a nice callback. I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm glad it exists. The older games are still better though. I'll die on that hill. If
I'll
you
have to play them again, man. It's been a little bit since I played them. Like they were never games I played a heck of a whole lot of, but I definitely remember. I think most of the time when I played them, it was probably over at one of your places or something. Honestly, I think I did play Turtles in Time on an arcade machine, like when I was like real little. But yeah, I don't know. It for me it was fun. It was definitely. I'm tempted to say I want to go back and play through it simply because we're all at your place and we're all on your profile, so you got like every achievement. And I definitely want to play through it again, at least on mine, and kind of unlock some of that stuff. But I don't know. It's really hard for me not to compare the game to something like, I mean, a game we both love is Scott Pilgrim, and I feel like that was one of the better kind of beat 'em up side scrollers. But I will also
mm,
say you did point out while we were hanging out that even that one has it's not a perfect side scroller beat 'em up. There are better ones.
yeah.
That one just purely nostalgia purposes. That one for me is one of the more probably my most memorable one.
Here's the thing. I mean, I love Scott Pilgrim just as a IP in general, but the Scott Pilgrim game was good. It was not great. I thought it was too long. Some of the combat was a little wonky too. Like he didn't always hit right. I mean, I liked the RPG elements to that one, and it definitely had some fun moments, that pulled from the lore and the canon, and just the general story. So I mean, I enjoyed Scott
Hmm.
Pilgrim for what it is. I don't think it is like the best beat 'em up, or even probably in the top like five. Like,
I think what really oh sorry I don't mean to cut you off, but I think like what really benefited and like you were saying this game didn't feel as memorable. I think for me honestly what made Scott Pilgrim so incredibly memorable is the soundtrack. Like the soundtrack, like I literally like without playing the game, sometimes every now and then I will like on on iTunes or something or on YouTube I
that
will
was the
look up
Anamanaguchi stuff, right? Yeah.
Gucci, yeah, and I will just straight up just listen to that without playing the game. It's I feel like a soundtrack can go a big way, and I agree with you. Like
It was
for
the
me, this
character
one,
of that game, like just
yes,
like the
yes.
style, the feel, the aesthetic. Like that's what made Scott Pilgrim memorable. Beyond just all the other hullabaloo about that game, for being delisted for a while and all that kind of stuff. This game it's a fun Turtles throwback, and if you're a Turtles fan, you're gonna enjoy it. But on its own, it doesn't have that magic. There's not a whole lot of nostalgic appeal to this game because, it's a new game. It's a modern game. It just doesn't have that same character to it.
This game doesn't replace Turtles in Time or anything.
No.
I think that's kind of the problem, is that, like, if we're going to experience, like, if we go, when we hang out next time, I'm probably would rather play Turtles in Time. Like,
but once again, here's the benefit. Like, if we say that was the case, so this does have the benefit of you can get more people involved in it. And I do think if you're just wanting to play some Turtles, you're not necessarily caring about what you're doing with it. You just want to vibe out a little bit, have some nostalgia, and play with a group of friends. This is still probably the better choice. But if you want to play the better game, Turtles in Time. But yes, then you're going to be limited by how many people can play. The combat is more limited, although I think for the time it was perfectly fine. But I don't know. That's all I really have to say. I don't want to drag it out too long. This was a fun game. If you're interested in it, it's on Game Pass. So, I mean, definitely check it out if you got Game Pass. And I'll tell you, if you are into physical collecting, the limited run, which I think we showed off a few weeks ago.
Dang it. I was going to touch on that.
Is awesome. The whole VHS casing. So if you are someone who's into that, I would say it might be worth it for that, reason alone, just because it'd be a really cool shelf piece. But it's fun for what it is. I'm glad it exists, but if you're a fan of Turtles, definitely go back and play the old ones if you haven't ever had a chance to.
So, not to toot my own horn, but I ordered one just the other day, so I'll show it off whenever it comes in. I got the $60 version, 70. I did do the VHS version.
Yeah, the same one I got. We won't see it for like half a year. So
no, probably not.
Probably along with that. I'm still waiting on my my vinyl for Scott Pilgrim, because I got the whole soundtrack on vinyl.
Got that?
No, it's not here yet. I saw not a shipping thing, a email about it potentially being ready like a month ago, but who knows? Yeah, it'll get here one day.
Luckily, I'm all caught up. I just want to get my my free Pizza Hut pizza card. That's the most important aspect of the game, of the limited edition. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, I hate to repeat, but I thought it was fun. It's definitely worth a playthrough, like you said, on Game Pass. Do you think this game, like, was, trying to think, I feel like this game really benefited from something like Game Pass. Because do you think people, like, naturally would have liked to have come out and to spend, I think it's $30 retail for the digital copy? Do you think this is, like, worth a $30 price tag digitally for a playthrough?
Oh, man.
Considering 2.5, 3 hours?
I don't think the time is necessarily how I'd value this. I think it, for one, depends on how much you care about Turtles, what's your nostalgia for it. $30 is not terrible. And I do think, supporting the developers, I mean, it's not like they are asking, $60 price for this. And there is a lot of features to it. It's a good game. I mean, it just...
So, probably gave them... we've touched on Game Pass all the time, but I would anticipate the developers probably got some sort of support, right? I mean, they have to be paid to get it on the
Well, yeah, they were paid something for this. I mean, we've talked about this before. Is that enough to justify, et cetera, et cetera? I'm not want to go through that. I mean, but if you're on a platform where your only option is to buy it outright, you don't have Game Pass or something like that, I think it's worth $30 if, one, you're a Turtles fan, and you have some friends to play it with. I mean, that alone, if you have that disposable income and that's not a stretch for you, yes. If it was $60, I would probably say no. But for a digital, $30, maybe you're just getting together with some buddies for a weekend, you could definitely, spend worse ways of doing it. So, yeah,
and again, you don't need like we played. You don't need multiple profiles. You had your one profile, and we all were able to play 6 characters. What were we all guests considered on that?
Yeah, it all logged in pretty easily. It wasn't like some weird, account jingo we had to figure out to kind of make everything work. We just all kind of grabbed a controller, popped it in, and everybody was good to go.
And it's not like an easy game. I think we played it on medium and had trouble with like the second or third boss.
Oh no, one of our buddies wanted us to start on the highest difficulty, and we got through I think like the second boss, and we're like, nope.
I don't remember that.
We started on the hardest because our friend's I'll be nice. He over anticipated or had over expectations of what we could do, but we knocked it down to like normal after that and breezed through it. It's not a hard game on the base difficulty.
No.